The calm waters of Lake Geneva reflect the snowy peaks and ancient castles in perfect, silent mirror image. A luxurious white yacht glides smoothly across the deep blue water as passengers enjoy afternoon wine on deck. But this serenity is merely a fragile mask concealing a sleeping monster waking up high in the mountains. Suddenly, a deafening, earth-shattering roar erupts from the Grandmont mountainside, shaking the entire valley to its very core. Millions of tons of massive rock collapse into the lake with the crushing weight of a nuclear bomb. Water blasts skyward, blocking out the sun and turning the bright summer day into instant, terrifying darkness. A massive wall of water forms instantly, rising vertically like a giant cobra ready to strike the land. The ferocious wave charges forward at jet speed, heading straight for the unsuspecting city of Geneva, completely unprepared. Geneva, the peaceful city and home of the United Nations, stands completely defenseless with absolutely no warning systems. Sirens scream hopelessly as people on the streets realize death is rushing towards them from the calm lake. The iconic jet d'eau water fountain is instantly swallowed by a mega wave twice its massive height. Cars driving on the Mont Blanc Bridge are tossed into the air like cheap plastic toys by water. Water surges into the old streets, crushing million-dollar watch shops into piles of worthless scrap metal and debris. Civilians scatter in narrow alleys as the black, freezing water crashes violently behind them, cutting off escape routes. There is no high ground for escape as the entire city transforms into a deadly, inescapable water trap. Switzerland, a landlocked nation, is now facing the absolute worst-case scenario recorded in human history within its borders. A catastrophic deluge in the heart of the European continent wipes away civilization's achievements in the blink of an eye. This is not science fiction. It is a dark historical event repeating itself on a scale of total destruction. Welcome to the doomsday of Geneva, as nature brutally reclaims exactly what belongs to it without any mercy. Witness the terrifying moment when the Swiss Alps unleash their deadly power upon the unsuspecting people of Geneva. Lake Geneva holds 89 billion cubic meters of water, a sleeping giant resting quietly within a deep glacial valley. But beneath this tranquil surface lies a geological instability that has threatened the region for thousands of years silently. A record-breaking heat wave strikes Europe, causing temperatures in the high Alps to soar to dangerous, unprecedented levels rapidly. Permafrost, the glue holding the limestone cliffs together, begins to melt rapidly and seep deep into the cracks. Water infiltrates the fractures, lubricating the soil layers and weakening the structural integrity of the mountain from within. At the foot of Mount Grandmont, schools of fish swim chaotically, sensing the abnormal micro-vibrations in the water. On the lake's surface, strange gas bubbles begin to rise, a phenomenon of degassing caused by changing pressure below. An old fisherman checking his nets frowns as he sees the water trembling slightly without any wind blowing. He looks up at Grandmont Peak, where small rocks are rolling down, creating thin trails of dust falling. Seagulls suddenly let out piercing cries and fly high into the sky, abandoning the lake's surface immediately in panic. In the seismic monitoring center in Zurich, the needles begin to draw jagged warning lines on the paper drums. A young geologist stares at the screen, her face going pale as she recognizes the terrifying signal patterns. "It is not an earthquake," she whispers. "It is a massive structural collapse happening right now at the source." But the warning is too late, as the natural process has already passed the point of no return. On the shore, tourists happily take photos, completely unaware that death is standing right above their heads looming. The clock strikes exactly 2 in the afternoon as a dry cracking sound echoes throughout the entire Rhone Valley. Everyone stops and looks up at the mountain, where a massive crack has just torn through the limestone slope. The crack spreads at breakneck speed, with dust rising thickly like gunpowder smoke from a massive explosion site. A colossal section of the mountainside, estimated at 10 million cubic meters, begins to slowly slide downwards steadily. Gravity accelerates the rock mass faster, turning potential energy into kinetic energy of brutal and total destruction. Trees are pulverized into wood chips, and rocks as large as buildings roll down like marbles down a slope. The sound of the landslide sounds like continuous rolling thunder, shaking the glass windows of distant houses violently. The fisherman on the boat screams in despair, trying to start the engine to escape, but it is too late. The massive mass slams towards the lake's surface at 200 kilometers per hour, absolutely unstoppable by anything. The moment of impact, 10 million tons of rock crash into the water, creating an instant, massive crater. The water cannot displace in time, compresses to the maximum, and explodes skyward like a nuclear detonation. The fisherman's boat vanishes in a split second, crushed under the immense weight of the earth and water. A column of water and mud 600 meters high rises vertically, completely blocking out the bright sunlight. The shock wave travels through the air, blowing away trees and ripping roofs off houses located near the shore. Lake Geneva is violently disturbed, with water receding far from the shore to prepare for the return strike. This is the drawback effect, a deadly sign that few recognize until it is too late to run. The energy from the impact is not dissipated like in the open ocean, but compressed within the narrow lake. The first wave forms, a wall of murky brown water, beginning to move with the speed of a jet. It heads straight for the lakeside cities, Lausanne, Montreux, and the biggest target, Geneva, at the lake's end. No tsunami sirens are activated, because Switzerland has never considered this scenario possible in its modern history planning. The people in Montreux only see a huge dust cloud in the distance, thinking it is just a storm. They do not know that beneath that cloud, a water monster is rushing to swallow everything in its path. The wave speed reaches 200 kilometers per hour, faster than any rescue speedboat could ever hope to outrun. The countdown for Geneva begins. Only 15 minutes remain before the city is completely wiped off the map. Nature has pulled the trigger, and the water bullet is flying straight into the heart of the European continent. Lausanne is the first victim, the Olympic city attacked by a 15-meter-high wall of water instantly. Alchiport is devastated as luxury yachts are crushed and thrown onto the shore like plastic toys. The wave does not stop, gliding along the lake's elongated shape, focusing all kinetic energy towards Geneva. In Geneva, the sky suddenly darkens as a low-frequency roar echoes ominously from the threatening horizon line. Tourists at the jet d'eau fountain stop laughing, eyes wide in terror, staring at the approaching monster. In an instant, the iconic 140-meter water column is swallowed by a black water wall. The massive steel pipe system at the fountain's base is bent like a straw by hydraulic pressure. The Mont Blanc Bridge, a main traffic artery, shakes violently as the wave crashes into ancient stone pillars. A double-articulated bus full of passengers is lifted into the air and flipped into the deadly swirling water. Concrete joints crumble. The bridge deck breaks in two, throwing dozens of cars into the watery hell below. The water breaches the embankment, flooding the lakeside avenue with the speed of a Formula One race car. The famous Beau Rivage Hotel is hit head-on, with main lobby windows shattering into millions of sharp fragments. Water surges into the lobby, sweeping away the mahogany reception desk and expensive crystal chandeliers in seconds. Rue du Rhône, the mecca of luxury watches, transforms into a river of mud filled with expensive debris. Patek Philippe watches worth a fortune float in the mud, becoming instantly worthless in the dirty water. Pedestrians run frantically into small alleys, but the water is faster than anyone's legs could ever be. A group is cornered in a dead end, desperately climbing window bars as water rises to their necks. The famous flower clock in the English garden is obliterated, vibrant flowers buried under a layer of thick mud. Water floods underground parking garages, turning them into tombs, burying thousands of modern vehicles under high pressure. Air pressure in the tunnels spikes, blowing manhole covers off the street surface like heavy artillery shells. The old town on the hill is temporarily safe, but ancient building foundations begin to erode dangerously fast. A 17th century building tilts and collapses, dragging a large section of wall into the floodwaters below. At the Rhône River outlet, the flow reverses, forcing lake water back into the nearby Verboise Dam instantly. Power generation turbines spin beyond their rated speed, emitting a piercing shriek before exploding in shower sparks. The entire city of Geneva plunges into darkness as the power grid overloads and shuts down simultaneously. A tram derails and crashes into a bank facade, electric sparks flashing brightly in the churning, muddy water. Water seeps through reinforced concrete layers, penetrating the secret gold vaults of private banks deep underground below. Stacks of Swiss franc banknotes float on the black water, an ironic image of wealth amidst total destruction. At the Nation's Square, the giant broken chair sculpture is submerged halfway, standing lonely in the vast water sea. Flags of 193 nations are torn by storm winds, soaked and drooping under the gray sky. Geneva University Hospital, on higher ground, is overwhelmed with thousands of emergency calls that cannot be answered. A rescue helicopter tries to lower altitude, but strong wind gusts make it wobble dangerously in midair. On flat rooftops, soaked survivors hold each other tight, shivering as they watch their city die slowly. The current is not just water, it is a deadly mixture of concrete, glass, vehicles, and broken trees. These debris fragments slam into standing buildings like artillery shells, causing massive secondary structural damage and collapse. Kornevin Station turns into an involuntary harbor, with train tracks submerged deep under 2 meters of dark mud. A high-speed TGV train is stranded, passengers banging on windows desperately as water rises to the floor rapidly. The wave hits the shore and rebounds, creating interference chaos that makes the water surface even more aggressive. The sound of metal clashing, concrete cracking, and water roaring creates a symphony of the apocalypse today. From above, Geneva looks like an architectural model, destroyed by an angry child pouring dirty water over it. Industrial chemical tanks rupture, dyeing the water with toxic streaks of purple and green swirling around dangerously. The Reformation Wall in Bastions Park floods, the stern faces of Calvin and Farel sinking slowly underwater. The city library floods, thousands of precious 18th century books swelling and disintegrating in the thick mud soup. At the animal park, cages are swept away, wild animals swimming desperately amidst the flooded city streets. Daylight fades away, not due to nightfall, but because thick water mist completely blocks out the sun. The lake water is glacial melt, 4 degrees Celsius, killing those immersed in it via thermal shock. A woman clings to a street lamp, tears mixing with rain, watching her home float away in pieces. No corner of Lower Geneva remains intact. Everything is wrapped in a thick layer of slimy mud. Nature proves that even the wealthiest, most modern cities are merely sandcastles before its raw, immense power. And as the wave recedes, it leaves behind a hellish landscape that no one dared to imagine. As the water finally recedes, it leaves behind a thick, suffocating layer of toxic sludge covering everything completely. The deafening roar of the wave is replaced by a terrifying, heavy silence, broken only by distant sobbing. Hypothermia becomes the new silent killer as the freezing glacial water drains the body heat of survivors rapidly. On the rooftops, shivering survivors huddle together, their expensive clothes ruined and soaked in freezing muddy water completely. The streets are completely impassable, blocked by mountains of debris, overturned vehicles, and the ruins of crumbled buildings. Geneva is effectively cut off from the outside world, an island of destruction isolated by mud and water. Ambulances and fire trucks are paralyzed on the highway, their wheels spinning uselessly in the deep, sticky mud. The smell of leaking gas mixes with the stench of swamp mud, creating a nauseating and dangerous atmosphere. A spark from a severed cable ignites a gas pocket, sending a fireball rising into the darkening sky. Panic sets in as the realization of total isolation hits the crowd, leading to chaotic scenes of desperation. Desperate parents wade through waist-deep mud, screaming the names of their missing children into the uncaring, empty void. Mobile networks are completely down, leaving thousands unable to contact their families to say they are still alive. Night falls rapidly over the ruined city, bringing with it a pitch-black darkness that hides the true horror. The only light comes from the uncontrolled fires burning in the business district, casting long, dancing, scary shadows. From a helicopter, the city looks like a war zone, bombed not by planes, but by nature's fury. The bridges connecting the two sides of the city are gone, severing the lifeline of escape for many. Underground vaults are flooded, destroying paper records and effectively erasing billions of dollars of wealth in minutes. Backup generators at the main hospital fail due to water intake, plunging the intensive care unit into darkness. Doctors work by the light of cell phones, trying to save patients without modern equipment or sterile tools. The drinking water supply is instantly contaminated with sewage and chemicals, posing a secondary threat of deadly disease. The railway lines are twisted ribbons of steel, signaling that no trains will arrive or depart for months. Geneva International Airport cancels all flights as the radar systems were blinded by the massive atmospheric pressure change. Rats force their way out of the flooded sewers, swarming the dry patches of land alongside human survivors. The temperature drops to near freezing as the damp air settles over the ruins of the shattered city. Rescue boats scan the dark water with searchlights, looking for movement among the floating debris and wreckage fields. A man sits on a pile of rubble, staring blankly at a broken clock, in a state of shock. Centuries of architectural history have been erased, replaced by a uniform landscape of brown destruction and wet despair. Insurance companies will declare force majeure, leaving thousands of people homeless and bankrupt without any financial compensation. The first night after the disaster will be the longest and coldest night in the history of Geneva. But amidst the ruins, the human spirit begins to fight back against the overwhelming power of the elements. Dawn breaks over the ruined city, revealing the terrible scar that nature has left behind on the landscape. Survivors step out from the darkness, beginning to clear the massive rubble with their bare hands in silence. Luxury watches lie buried deep in the mud, a testament to the fleeting nature of material wealth today. Relief helicopters from neighboring countries land, bringing fresh hope for a new beginning to the devastated population. The Taradunum event of the year 563 has repeated, reminding us that history is always a looping cycle. Lake Geneva returns to a fake peace, hiding the monster sleeping deep beneath the dark water surface again. Geneva will be rebuilt eventually, but the psychological scars will haunt the people here forever and ever. We build towering skyscrapers, but we forget the fragile foundation that lies beneath our feet all the time. Nature is not cruel. It is simply indifferent to the tiny existence of human beings on this planet. Are you sure where you live is safe? Or is the next disaster waiting for you tomorrow?